Sir Michael Ramsay, one of the greatest historians of all time,
All right, let's see it.
he looked at the Gospel of Luke as an atheist, and he said, I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to dissect the Gospel of Luke and show you why it's not historically accurate. He became a Christian when he looked into the Gospel of Luke and said that Luke is the greatest historian of all time.
Imagine setting out to disprove the Bible and ending up proving it instead.
So this video is spinning an apologetic tale that is not supported by the data, and it is full of historical inaccuracies. And particularly this narrative about staunch atheist who sets out to disprove the Bible, becomes convinced it's true, and then converts to Christianity. None of that is actually supported by the data. To begin, it's not Michael Ramsay, it's William Mitchell Ramsay. And there are no data that demonstrate he was ever an atheist. That is an interpretation of the fact that he was a critical scholar who was skeptical of the historical accuracy of the New Testament, and they just assumed, oh, he must have been an atheist. And then he didn't set out to disprove the Gospel of Luke. To begin, he didn't really have much to do with the Gospel of Luke. His area of expertise was the archaeology and history of Asia Minor, Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. That's not really relevant to the Gospel of Luke. It's relevant to the book of Acts, and the book of Acts was the main focus of his early research. And he didn't set out to disprove it. He was trained in what's known as the Tübingen School, which was a particularly skeptical 19th century German approach to the New Testament that dates a lot of it to even later than critical scholars date these texts today. So what he explains is that he assumed that the book of Acts was written between 160 and 180 CE, and that it was full of a bunch of historical inaccuracies. But as he was going about his research, he decided that a lot of what he had been taught was not accurate, and that the book of Acts actually does align with the geography and the history of Asia Minor. And so what he explains is that his assumptions that he had been trained by the Tübingen School to accept were wrong and became overturned. And he then went on to become an apologist. There's nothing in his writings, nothing in the writings of the people who knew him about him being an atheist who then converted to Christianity as a result of his research. And there's a reason that apologists don't ever talk about his later apologetic work. It's because it was not good. It was highly speculative and rejected by even the scholars of his own day. What they talk about is this narrative about his conversion, because there is apologetic value in someone who is a well-respected critical scholar adopting an apologetic take. Because if you can't engage the data or construct a very robust argument for the accuracy of the texts themselves, well, the next best thing would be to point to someone who is an expert who does accept their historical accuracy and say, well, they must know what they're talking about. So believe him because he believes in the Bible, and he was not only a highly respected academic, but started out as skeptical of the historical accuracy of the text. It's the apologetic approach of basing an argument on the testimony of an expert. They're an expert in this field. They also believe the Bible. That's got to count for something. And so that helps to gin up this sense that, well, the people who know it best seem to accept that it is historically accurate, so I should accept it as well without actually knowing the data or going through the arguments themselves.
The deeper you dig, the more the Bible stands strong.
Not really. There are certainly ways that the Bible accurately reflects broader geographical and historical events and features and things like that, but this doesn't necessarily mean that the events being narrated are accurate. So when you look at the actual events that are narrated in the Bible, the majority of them do not stand up to critical scrutiny, and just pointing out, well, they got the city right, doesn't really overcome those challenges any more than it would by pointing to Daredevil or Spider-Man and saying, hey, Hell's Kitchen is real, New York City is real, therefore this kid must have been bitten by a radioactive spider. Like, the logical leap is parallel. So just because the cities in Anatolia do line up doesn't mean that all of these things happened. It just means that the author who wrote this was closer to an accurate understanding of the geography of that region than the Tübingen school in the 19th century assumed, which doesn't mean a whole lot.
Follow for more stories where faith meets real history and leaves no room for doubt.
Nah, I'm good. But the fit for this video has been the Dale Keown Incredible Hulk.